What's going on, everybody? Today, what I want to work on is present perfect subjunctive. And we're going to do a few things in terms of the present perfect subjunctive. Obviously, we're going to talk about what it is, but I want to try to situate it within some other grammar. And as you can see here, under other examples, which we'll get to, I have the present perfect indicative, and then I also here have the present subjunctive. And so you're really using sort of some concepts from both, but the present perfect subjunctive is going to function in its own way, right? There's a specific use for it. So we're going to get to that as well. And then, of course, as you can see, there's a whole lot of English up here. So we're going to do a lot of translating too. And so hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a pretty strong understanding of what the present perfect subjunctive is and how it functions with some other grammar that we've gone over. Now, of course, if you're wondering about the present subjunctive, if you need a refresher on that, of course, just check out the video on that. If you want to, need a refresher on the present perfect indicative or even the past perfect indicative, which isn't up here, but if you need a review, check that video out as well. And so let's go ahead and get into it and just have a look here with what we're working with. And so, as I've said, we're dealing today with the present perfect subjunctive, and as with all perfect tenses, the present perfect subjunctive will come with its own conjugations, of course, of the verb haber, right? That's our helping verb. And so it's going to come with its own set of conjugations. So let's have a look at these. So we have haya, hayas, haya, hayamos, hayáis, and hayan. Now, of course, like I said, with every perfect tense, you will have your conjugation of haber, right? It's the helping verb. And so what you're actually looking at is the subjunctive conjugation of the verb haber. And so this is just most of you all that have used the haber in the subjunctive in the past have probably only used these two, right? And that's okay. You really start getting more into it in terms of all of its conjugations when you use the present perfect subjunctive. And so that's totally normal. And so again, I want to just run through these, but I also want to make sort of a quick note on this letter itself. And for that matter, the double L and the Y, right? With a word like this, like all double L's and Y's, you're going to see a range of how people pronounce it. And so I'm going with, for the sake of the video, I'm going with haya, something that's relatively neutral, right? Now, if you get farther down into Latin America, for example, you get to say Argentina, this is going to sound more like an SH. So asha or ashas, right? And so I'm not going to walk through all of the different ways people do it across all the Spanish-speaking world because it really is wide-ranging. Whereas if you're somewhere more in and around Colombia, it might sound like a J. So aja, right? And again, I'm generalizing for all of these. And so for those of you who are watching who are from those areas, I recognize that the accent within those areas is also wide-ranging. So just as a generalization in terms of how the Y and again the double L are pronounced. And so to finish, if you're somewhere, say in northern Latin America, like Mexico, this is going to be very much like a aya, right? Like it almost, like it looks for a lot of English speakers. And so it would be aya, so it would be much like a Y, right? Like a normal, say, traditional Y, right? It won't sound like a J or appear to be like an SH or anything like that. So anyways, all that to say, as I go through this, I'm going to pronounce it as aya, but know that if you hear someone using this across the Spanish-speaking world, that Y will sound differently depending on where you are. And so, anyways, so let's do this one more time. Haya, hayas, haya, hayamos, hayáis, hayan. And of course, vosotros, you're going to get in Spain. But I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to pause between each one. And so, because I want you to repeat it on your end there inside Let's have the video. So here we go. Haya, hayas, haya, hayamos, hayáis, haya. And right, and so hopefully wherever you are watching this, you're able to follow along and pronounce and notice how we pronounce these in the subjunctive, haber in the subjunctive. And so, like all perfect tenses have haber as their helping verb, you also, of course, it wouldn't be a perfect tense without haber in the helping verb and a past participle. And so our past participles, again, we've sort of nicknamed them hado and ido, which are hado for the ARs and then ido for the IRs. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably already know that. And so, if not, that was just a quick refresher. And now, so what you would do is, let's just take comer. I'm just gonna do comer here. We would drop the ending, we're left with the stem, and with it being an ER, you would add ido. So your past participle for comer becomes comido, right? Hablar becomes hablado, for example. Vivir becomes vivido, right? And so, anyway, so you have your past participle, you have your conjugation of haber, in this case it's in the subjunctive, right? And so that is the structure of present perfect subjunctive. So now we want to look at how it's used, right? How do we actually use this in a sentence? And I think I'm going to change up markers, and we're going to go with, blue. And so, it kind of matches this box I made here for rules. So, so when we talk about how we use the present perfect subjunctive in a sentence, right? We always have to think of it, generally it would be used with, say, two clauses. And by two clauses, I'm just going to use these as an example, and then I'll bring us back over here. So I'm happy that, right? So this, the that, right, if that made any sense, is breaking up your clauses. So this gives us clause 1, subject, right, subject, verb, and then of course happy. And then you have that, which is sort of splitting them up. And then we have a new subject and a new verb, right? New subject, and then in this case, of course, because we're working with the present perfect subjunctive, you have a have had. So you have haber, or you have the helping verb, if you will, and then you have a past participle, right? And then you have the rest of the sentence. And so that's, as I bring you back over here, that's sort of the structure I want you to keep in mind. And so that two clause structure where it's subject verb in one clause, and it will dictate that you use the subjunctive in the second clause. And so all of the rules that are, effectively used for the present subjunctive are really going to come into play for the present perfect subjunctive, because it's really kind of operating on similar principles. And I'll explain what the difference is here in just a minute. But again, if you need a refresher on the subjunctive, that present subjunctive, check out that video. And so to bring you over here, we have, I'm calling them rules. I don't know. If you think there's a better word for it, that's okay. But just because I felt like writing rules up here, I did. And so it needs to be, for you to be able to use the present perfect subjunctive, it needs to be a present tense weirdo, or you need to have a present tense weirdo in the first clause. And a weirdo, like I said, if you need to watch the video on the present subjunctive, that I'll explain weirdo there as well. And so it's really just an acronym for a whole host of reasons why you would use the subjunctive in the second clause. But the weirdo itself is found in the first clause, right? And so if there's that weirdo in the first clause, and for the record, all of these in the first clause would, when we write them in Spanish, will fall under the weirdo category. So just for the record. In fact, over here with the present subjunctive, they will also be weirdos, whereas here they will not be. They will be what we'll call non-weirdos. And so, again, that's an acronym for all the different ways you would use, all the different types of verbs or categories of types of verbs that you would find in the first clause that would then obligate you to use the subjunctive in the second clause. And hopefully, I know that's a lot of terminology and maybe even jargony, but hopefully with these examples, it'll start to make sense. And so again, like I said, a present tense, you need to have a present tense weirdo in the first clause, right? Present tense weirdo, present tense subjunctive. And when we get to the past subjunctive, or the imperfect subjunctive, past tense weirdo, past tense subjunctive. So they'll sort of work hand in hand, but again, don't even worry about that right now. So the second one is referring to a past event, right? And that's going to become even clearer when we pair sort of why we use the present subjunctive versus why we use the present perfect subjunctive, right? And so that'll become clearer. So again, the two things we really need are a weirdo in the first clause, which dictates that we use a subjunctive in the second clause. So a form of the subjunctive will be used. And then whatever it is in the second clause needs to be essentially referring to a past event. So because we need to be able to say, have studied. I hope that you have studied, right? Presently hoping, but referring to a past event. So like it's the about to be time to start an exam, and I say, I hope that you have studied, right? And so that will be in Spanish. We would then use the present perfect subjunctive for that have studied. And again, like I said, we'll get to that. So, but what I want to do before we get to these, I want to just look at our other, sort of walk you towards that direction by looking at some other ones. And I think we're going to use green. I think green works really well. So, again, present perfect indicative, if you need to watch a video on it, just take a moment, pause, go watch the video, and come back. We'll be here. And so, or I'll be here. I don't have anybody with me. So, so I'll be here, right? But we have the present perfect indicative. So as I said, if you need to take a look at that video, go for it. But we're going to move along here. And notice that I know that you have studied. And again, the perfect tense part is right here. This is the subject, of course. And then have studied. Helping verb, past participle, right? Now, what's going to separate those, what's going to make it indicative as opposed to subjunctive is this verb right here. That's the verb that is in this case, a non-weirdo, right? And so our translation will be yo sé. Now you don't have to have yo, but if you want to put it there, that's cool, right? Yo sé que tú has estudiado. Like I said, I'm not going to re-explain the present perfect indicative here, but I want to have those as examples so you see what, sort of pair it, if you will, with the present perfect subjunctive. And so, yo sé que tú has estudiado. And now, again, like I said, in the first clause, this being the first clause, right, clause 1, this sé is a non-weirdo because it's saying I know. There's no doubt, there's no recommendations, there's no anything like that that would make it a weirdo. And so, yo sé, and then que breaks it up, and then we have our second clause here. Yo sé que tú has estudiado, right? And so that's saying that I know that you have studied. That's the present perfect indicative. And so what differentiates the present perfect indicative from the present perfect subjunctive, like I said, is simply a verb like that, a weirdo. And let me just translate this one, and then we'll head on back over there. So we hope that they have gone to the beach. So now we're hoping that they have gone, right? And so I'm going to just write nosotros. You don't have to, but nosotros esperamos que, right? There's our que, right? That's breaking up the two clauses. So now we have subject verb here, que, splitting them up. We'll even write a 1 there. Nosotros esperamos que they, so we'll just say ellos, hayan ido a la playa. Right? And again, notice that that Y, playa, right? That it'll be pronounced differently across the Spanish-speaking world. And so, nosotros esperamos que ellos, this as well, hayan ido a la playa. And so, here's what we have. we have over here in the first clause, we have a weirdo, right? Specifically, the E of the weirdo, not just because it's esperamos, but because it falls under emotion, right? And so that dictates that in the second clause we use a subjunctive. And again, you'll see that when we do that over here too. So that was what we did with the present subjunctive. Now what we're doing is saying we presently hope, like right this moment, we hope that they have gone, right? It's the event is come and gone, if you will. And so we're talking about a past event. So we hope presently that they have gone to the beach. And so because this is a weirdo, we have to use subjunctive here, but we're also saying have gone, right? And so, let's put this away. And so, nosotros esperamos que ellos hayan ido, right? And so that's, the have gone has to be in the subjunctive, and the have, of course, being that it's haber as a helping verb, that have has to be conjugated in the subjunctive. So that's why you have the subjunctive up here. That's why you have the present perfect subjunctive, right? And so, again, I'm going to leave that here. I'm going to make my way back over to these examples, and then we'll come back to these here. And so let's do the other present perfect indicative. And so again, I just want to have that up there so you can see how the present perfect indicative works as with a non-weirdo in the first clause, right? And so we believe that he has arrived. So we believe. There's no doubt, there's no disbelief, there's no denial, there's no recommendations, there's no hope, there's no insisting, there's no any of that. And so with we believe, right? And again, just to be clear, things like belief, while in say philosophy and other areas there, there's room for debate on that. Grammatically speaking in Spanish, when we say we believe, it falls under the non-weirdo category. So hopefully for some of you are like, yeah, but believe, that's not certain. But grammatically speaking, it is. And so grammatically speaking in Spanish, right? And so I just want to be clear about that just in case some of you are thinking or analyzing the specific word. And so we believe that he has arrived. So we'll write nosotros again. Nosotros creemos, right? We believe that he has, or you can say pensar, really. Nosotros creemos que él ha llegado, right? Nosotros creemos que él ha llegado. And I'll just write pensamos up here just for fun, right? Even though that's think, right? Be saying we think that he has arrived as opposed to we believe he has arrived. But either way, both are non-weirdos, right? And so, nosotros creemos, we believe that he has arrived. You don't need subjunctive because there's no weirdo in the first clause. In other words, creemos is not a weirdo. And so we just use the present perfect indicative, right? And so I want to move down to subjunctive because that's going to be like the sort of segue back over here. And so we have here, you hope that I have a good day. Now keep in mind, when we talk about the subjunctive here and here, right, you're going to have different subjects, right? You're not going to say, you hope that you have a good day. You would just say, or I hope that I have a good day in Spanish, right? And I'm speaking for Spanish. So these subjects will always be different because if they're not, it's the same subject. You would just, in most cases, conjugated verb followed by infinitive, right? Espero tener un buen día. I hope to have a good day is what you would say, right? And so as opposed to this, there's two subjects. And so, of course, as you know, it's being divided up by que or that. It's breaking up those two clauses. So hopefully that's making sense. But let's walk through these four and then we'll finish up here. And so you hope that I have a good day. So let's take a look at this. You, so that's tú, esperas, right? You hope, of course, that que yo, I, right, have is tener, right? So to have a good day is tener un buen día. but I have to put tener in the subjunctive, right? Because again, I have a weirdo here that's dictating or obligating me to make that verb in the second clause subjunctive. And so, again, like I said, if you need those subjunctive rules, hit pause, watch the subjunctive video, and come right back. So, tú esperas que yo tenga un buen día, right? There you go. So that's the present subjunctive. Now, really, all that's going to change from here to here is this is saying you hope that you have a good day, as opposed to, so let's say this is a Friday, right? And we're wishing someone, I'm going to sort of move away from the actual example, but let's say it's Friday and you say, I hope that you all have a good weekend. Espero que ustedes tengan un buen fin de semana. Now it's a Friday. You come back on a Monday and you would say to the same group of people, I hope that you have had a good weekend. So then that's when you would use the present perfect subjunctive, because you're going from hoping on Friday that someone has a good weekend, something they're going into future-wise, if you will, to something that is come and gone, and you're hoping that they have had a good weekend. And so that's going to differentiate between the present subjunctive and the present perfect subjunctive, actually. And so hopefully that will continue to get clearer as we walk through this. So we have here, he recommends that I drink more water. So, él recomienda que yo beba, or tome, we're going to put tome there, right? Either one. Más agua. Right? So, él recomienda que yo beba, or yo tome más agua. These both are being put in the subjunctive, right? Those are both put in the subjunctive there. And so, again, just to, we'll take out a different marker, just to reiterate, él, which really can be capitalized, él recomienda, that's a weirdo, right? So this is a weirdo, right? Here's a weirdo, right here. Right, that's a weirdo as well. So because there's a weirdo in the first clause, right, it is obligating us to use the subjunctive in the second clause. So él recomienda que, again, breaking up the clauses, right, and then we get a new subject and a new verb in the second clause, yo, and then we want to use beber in the subjunctive, or tomar in the subjunctive. So it would be yo beba más agua, or yo tome más agua. So let's have a look at number 3. I'm going to use this marker. We insist that you sleep at least 8 hours, right? Nosotros insistimos, all right, let's get that right, en que tú duermas por lo menos 8 horas, right? So, nosotros insistimos, we insist, right? Again, this is a weirdo. Nosotros insistimos en que, right? If you notice with insistir, it's insistir in, right? En, right? Nosotros insistimos en que, or I'll even put it in parentheses, really. So, nosotros insistimos en que tú duermas por lo menos 8 horas. Now, what's most important here, of course, you know, the extra information is good, but most importantly, we have insistimos, right? Let's take out a different color. Nosotros insistimos, right? This is a weirdo, right? As I told you, they're all going to be weirdos because they're the subjunctive. But nosotros insistimos en que tú, new subject, and that verb dormir will be conjugated in the present subjunctive. Nosotros insistimos en que tú duermas por lo menos 8 horas. Right? And so let's check out this last one. It's not true that you are 20 years old. Right? That's true. So, or I should say that is not true. So, and so what are we going to do here? We're going to actually use an imperfect expression. Right? Or impersonal expression, sorry. We're going to use an impersonal expression which is no es la verdad, right? And so, no es la verdad. In other words, right there I'm saying it is not true, or you can say no es, or sorry, we don't have that la there, right? So let's do no es verdad, right? And no es cierto, right? You can pick either one, verdad or cierto, right? Both in effect giving you the same thing. They're both in effect saying it is not true that, right? Que, of course, right? You are 20 years old. Now in Spanish, as you all know, to be an age is tener 20 años, for example, in this case. So, no es cierto que yo, right, subject of this clause, tenga 20 años, right? You can say 20 años de edad if you want, or you could just say 20 años. No es verdad que yo tenga 20 años. So again, it's a weirdo, right? It's a weirdo, right? And so what makes it a weirdo is it is not true, right? As opposed, if it were true, it would be a non-weirdo because it's true, right? So, no es verdad or no es cierto. That's very key, right? Que yo tenga 20 años, right? And so hopefully you're able to grasp this concept of weirdo in the first clause, subjunctive in the second clause, because I want to finish with this, right? And so I'll bring you guys on over here so we can look at, number 3 and 4. Let's see. Oh, I skipped over number 1. So let's look at number 1. That was perfect, right? And so we're going to use, this is a good one anyways, but I want to do number 1. And so I'm happy that you have had a good weekend, right? And so that sort of falls in line with what we were saying earlier. I'm currently happy that you have had a good weekend. And so let's have a look at that, right? And I'm gonna actually get rid of that so we have some space. And so that is yo me alegro, right? Now you can say me alegro, like I'm happy, right? Or me alegra with an A, which is saying it makes me happy, or it pleases me, or it happies me, if you will, right? Yo me alegro que, right? What do you think it is? We have two, we have a weirdo, and so we have to use this one here. So, yo me alegro que tú hayas tenido un buen fin de semana, right? And again, this falls in line with what I was saying earlier. So, let's say it's Friday. You say, hey, yo espero que ustedes tengan un buen fin de semana. Friday. Come Monday, right, I could say, I hope that you all have had a good weekend. Espero que ustedes hayan tenido un buen fin de semana. Now, again, this one is just simply saying, this is where it's a little different. It's saying, I'm happy that you had a good weekend. So, the response is, yeah, we had a great weekend. It was awesome. We went and surfed some great waves. It's like, oh, bueno, buenísimo. Me alegro que ustedes hayan tenido un buen fin de semana. And that's how that exchange works. And so hopefully you can see the difference between when you would use present subjunctive and when you would use present perfect subjunctive. So they have their specific moments. And so let's have a look at 3 and 4, right? And call it a day. So we have, they doubt that we have studied for 3 hours. So we have doubt, disbelief, denial, which is of this weirdo. Let's see if I can spell it right. The weirdo bunch, it's not there. It's D, doubt, disbelief, and denial. And so let's have a look at this. They doubt, so let's just go with ellos. Ellos dudan que, right? They doubt that, right? This is Clause 1, Clause 2, right? I think at this point you got it, right? Ellos dudan que nosotros, make sure I spell that right, hayamos estudiado por 3 horas, right? That's an O, right? Now again, for those of you who are asking yourself, oh, I thought it was para, right? No, it's por. And like in the por and para video, I talk about this. Por is a unit of measuring time, or sorry, 3 horas is a unit of measuring time. So we would use por because it's a unit of measuring time. So ellos dudan, they doubt, right? So we've got our weirdo. We're obligated, of course, to use the subjunctive in the second clause, but in the second clause we want to say have studied, not studied. See the difference, right? And so this is the difference. We're using a perfect tense. And so let's finish up here. You don't believe. Now that's playing off a little bit of doubt, because doubt itself is dudar. But to not believe is, I'll write it up here, no creer, right? And so be careful here, because notice that creer, to believe, is a non-weirdo, but no creer means to not believe, which falls under doubt, disbelief, denial. So be careful with that. And so you don't believe, so to no crees, or for that matter, we could do piensas, right? Because no pensar is also becomes a weirdo. So tú no crees, or tú no piensas que nosotros have drunk, right? So hayamos tomado, right? Or bebido, for those of you who are fans of that verb, 6 tazas de café, right? That's an accent there. So hopefully, let me walk through this with you guys really quickly. So tú no crees, right? I'm going to stick with this one here. Right, I'm going to use that one. Tú no crees, you don't believe that, right? And again, we have this que, in much of the same way that in English is breaking up your clauses. So we got two, and we have clause 1 here. Subject, verb of first clause, weirdo, of course. This is a weirdo right here, weirdo. Que nosotros hayamos tomado 6 tazas de café. So we don't believe, or sorry, you don't believe that we have drunk 6 cups of coffee. And so because we're saying, or in this case, you don't believe that we have drunk, the have has to be in the subjunctive. Why? Because in the first clause we have a weirdo. It's forcing us to. And so, tú no crees que nosotros hayamos tomado 6 tazas de café. Now, I understand this is a really challenging concept. And so in theory, it's less challenging to memorize these conjugations and of course dial in the past participles. However, I put these up here, these 3 different ones, because there's similarities in them, but at the same time they have their own unique use in Spanish. And so hopefully in this video, I was able to articulate that well enough for you to have a better understanding of how they work in the language. And so, like I said, even the present subjunctive is really challenging for a non-Spanish speaker to dial in. It takes time. And so if that's already a challenge, how much more of a challenge is this? So recognize that this is going to take some time. And so if you need practice or more sort of how-tos and things like that, just look below in the description box. And I put some stuff down there for you guys. So thanks a lot. Hopefully this was helpful, and adios.